We're thrilled to be here today with Kelly Augspuger, who's based in Ohio. Kelly is a long-term care insurance specialist, a certified senior advisor, and she is co-founder of Steadfast Insurance with her husband, as well as the host of a podcast called Steadfast Care Planning. And we're thrilled to have her here. She helps financial advisors, estate planners, CPAs, individuals, families, and so much more understanding the often complicated and misunderstood world of long-term care. And I'm going to add a few things to this, which I noticed on her LinkedIn profile. She's a top 10 woman of distinction in insurance for 2022. 2022 top 100 insurance business of America. And Kelly is very active with volunteering her time to help others. All this while also, along with her husband, bringing up 2 children. So not sure where Kelly finds the time, but she does. And we're thrilled to have her here. Thanks for being here, Kelly.
Todd, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
So let's jump right in. Let's talk about related to caregiving, because that's going to be the framework for this, as well as patient advocacy. Tell us a little bit about your journey as a caregiver for your grandparents in the past, and then how that transitioned you from not thinking you were a caregiver to being a caregiver.
Yeah, caregiving, really quite a journey. All of my grandparents needed care to some extent, some of them more than others. Most of them, their spouses provided care for them, at least in the beginning, until they just couldn't do it anymore. With my paternal grandma, my mama, her husband passed away. My grandpa passed away, I think probably 20 years before she needed care. But as she aged, she never had any like big event necessarily that really required her needing care. It was just due to the frailty of aging, getting older, becoming less mobile, and just losing muscle strength. And so she was requiring some care. And in the beginning, it looked different from the end, right? There's a continuum of care that we often see in the caregiving journey. And with her, I was taking her to doctor's appointments, getting her hair done, grocery shopping, those kinds of things. So really, I did not consider myself a caregiver. I just considered I'm a granddaughter. I had flexibility in my job at the time to be able to do these things. And then as time passed, it became very clear that okay, Mama is needing some more help. She's even needing some hands-on assistance. So it really came to a point, Todd, where I was even helping her in the shower and helping her bathe. And she was, again, living at home in her condo by herself. There was no home care coming in. She was really on her own. And so at that point, when the bathing came up, for me, that was a huge red flag. And I went to my parents. I said, listen, Mom and Dad, Mama's needing way more help than I think we can safely provide her. I think it's time for us to look at home care or maybe look at assisted living. Plus, she was just very isolated. She did have neighbor friends, but she wasn't really interacting with them much. And I noticed she was definitely I was seeing signs of depression. It's time to do something about this. So my caregiving journey, was really over a couple of years, but it came to a point where it made sense for her to move to assisted living. She was going to get the care she needed, and she was going to get socialization, which she really needed too. And she resisted it a lot in the beginning, but she came around. I mean, she didn't want to leave her home and her stuff. She was very, very emotionally attached to her stuff, which I think most people are. But she came to a realization that, this was probably in her best interest and our best interest. And so she did make that move and that transition. And I think it really was in everybody's best interest. So yeah, that really was my experience in caregiving. My other grandparents, like I said, their spouses provided care. And then it came to a point where they did end up having some home care for one of my grandparents. And then we had to move one of my grandmas to a nursing facility. She was on Medicaid for a time. My grandpa provided care for her for 5 years after a stroke. So, I mean, there are definitely a variety of ways that my family has seen care provided, even using the VA, as one of my grandpas was a vet. And I've seen how this can have devastating consequences on all involved, especially when there's not a plan, and they didn't have a plan. It was all crisis mode. It was, oh my goodness, what's going on? We need to figure out what to do here. And at that point, irrational decisions can be made. And, the family feels that. And financially, it's very expensive too.
Absolutely. Thanks for all of that. That certainly sets up our ambitious agenda for the day,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is great. So important. So from that, people can probably take uh, an answer to my next question, which is, how did this play into your passion for what you do now?
Yeah, yeah, all that family experience, it really highly motivated me to help other people, knowing that there are better ways to provide care, to pay for care, to plan for care. And so when my husband and I started our insurance agency, um, I had a friend come to me who was 60 at the time, and she said, Dave Ramsey said we need to plan for care, and I'm 60, so I need to plan for care. Can you help me, Kelly? And so it was really, that was my aha moment where I knew that that's what I really was called to do, to help and serve families in this way. And so that really kicked off my journey to becoming a specialist in planning for care.
So how does one come up with a plan? Whether insurance or it's not a solution, how do they pay for it? Who provides it and where to receive it?
Sure. So there are really three main things that people need to consider when planning for future extended care. And I would like to kick that off to extended care, long-term care. When people hear the word long-term care, like for you, Todd, what's the first image or word that comes to mind when you think long-term care? What do you think of?
I just think of insurance.
Oh, do you really? Okay. What else comes to mind? I've actually never heard that answer. That's funny. What else do you think most people think when they hear long-term care?
I think of either in or out of a facility, some kind of
Okay.
assistance.
Sure, sure. So nursing home is usually like the number one answer I get when I say long-term care. What do you visualize? What do you think? People think, oh, a nursing home, wheelchairs, hallway, dark, cold, just uninviting. Okay. I want to get away from that image. And I like to use the word extended care because I think it provides a different visual and we don't have that negative stigma. So, what is extended care? Really, what it boils down to is if you need assistance throughout the day with maybe physical activities of daily living, transferring, toileting, bathing, dressing, eating, or continence, or you need supervision due to a cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, something like that. Okay. That's what we're talking about with extended care. It's not a location. It's not nursing home. It's not assisted living. It's not home care. It could be any location. It's really a matter of, do you need assistance? Okay. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about extended care. So when we're thinking of how to come up with a plan to pay for this future extended care, we want to think about three things: how to pay for care, if we're going to actually pay for care, not have informal care provided by family. Who is going to provide that care? Is that going to be a family member? Is that going to be a home care agency? Is that going to be a facility? And where do we want to receive it? Home or somewhere else? Okay, so those are the big things: how to pay, who's going to provide, where to receive the care. And in the how to pay for care, that's really where I come in as a specialist to say, okay, does it make sense for your situation and your finances to fund your future extended care with an insurance policy? And there are different types of insurance policies, but let's see if this is a good fit for you, okay, based on your health, your situation, your finances. So those are the main things to think about when coming up with a plan.
So it sounds like the first part of it is educating
Mhm.
individual, educating the couple, the families on what this is all about. Does that sound correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, really, I like to say I lead with education. So, I am educating my clients on what long term care insurance is, how it works, how much care costs. And that's going to depend on a variety of things. Where do they live in the country? Do they want to receive home care? Have they thought about an assisted living? Do they know what the current prices are, and then even what future prices are? And I have a great tool that I use to be able to actually show what costs of care are depending on where they are. And then coming up with a plan to efficiently fund that policy that's meaningful and affordable. Meaningful and affordable. Those are the two key things. You might want a policy that's a huge, robust policy like, $12,000 a month with lifetime benefits and all these things, sure, that sounds great. But are you going to be able to afford that? Is that going to fit in your budget? Maybe not. So coming up with a way to pay for a good portion of your care, knowing that, okay, there might be some remaining care that I am paying for out of pocket. So really I'm co-funding, I'm self-funding some, but then my insurance policy can help cover a good portion of it.
So let's talk about the process.
Yeah.
So we've talked about offline, it's so important, the health pre-screen, that's a part of the
Mhm.
assessment process, and then how that goes into qualifying or not, and what are the solutions.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So important. This is one of the first things I do with my clients is when I'm really fact finding. So obviously I want to find out, what's motivating them first of all for planning for future extended care. Do they have personal experience? Do they have longevity in their family? What are their main concerns? And finding about their family, are they married? Do they have kids? Where they want to retire? Those things are really important. Along with that, health and medical history and family history are all very important. You may have just recently changed medications, added a new medication, had a dosage change. If you don't communicate that with your long-term care insurance specialist, that could actually postpone you or even decline you for coverage. Something so small as a dosage change or a new medication recently, like the last 6 months. So, and then of course, there are things like family history. Do you have like your parents? Do they both have dementia? Or grandparents, if you have that kind of medical history knowledge, what kind of family history do you have? What are your genetics? That's really important because if you have, let's say, both parents have dementia or maybe passed away, had cognitive impairments, different insurance companies look at that differently. Some insurance companies might say, okay, we are limiting your coverage to $5,000 per month and only maybe this amount of coverage. Some might say that's actually too much of a risk for us. We're not insuring you. Okay. And then even other things, have you recently had a surgery? Do you have a pending surgery or test results that are not back yet? Like those are all really important things when I am pre-screening my clients. And what that really looks like, Todd, is I have a questionnaire that they fill out. Okay. It's all done privately online. It's password protected. They go in, they answer these things. I review it with my underwriters. It's not sent to the insurance company with their name. So the insurance companies don't know it's them, but I'm giving them really the data and the history to just say, okay, these people age 55, these are their health conditions. Are they eligible for coverage now? If not now, how long do we have to wait? So those things really need to happen up front. If you are looking for coverage right now and the person that you're working with, the agent or advisor you're working with, does not health pre-screen you, it's not going to be a good situation, I can tell you that, because they might say, "Oh yeah, well let's put in an application." You might get declined. You might get postponed, okay? And if you're declined, some insurance companies say, "Well, if you were previously declined, we're not even going to look at you because there's a good reason that other insurance company declined you, and we don't want to put the time and effort into doing that when we know you've already been declined." So I try to limit my declines as much as possible, and that's why health pre-screening is so important.
If they qualify, what are the solutions for it?
Yeah, great question. So, in the long term care insurance market, there are really two main types of long term care insurance. Okay. The first one is traditional long term care insurance. The second one is called hybrid, might be called linked benefit or asset based. Three names. I wish our industry would come together and say, we're just going to call it one thing. But really, there's three words that they use, but it's all really the same hybrid. Okay. You're combining benefits. A traditional long-term care insurance policy is going to be pure insurance. Think of your home and auto insurance, okay? It's purely insurance. You don't have an added benefit if you don't use it, okay? You're paying typically monthly or annual premiums. We do have a company that offers a 10 pay, which means you can pay 10 annual premium payments and then your policy is completely paid up. But the idea behind the traditional policies is it's typically the best bang for your buck, okay? The best way to get the most coverage for the smallest premium. Now, the caveat here is you typically have to be more healthy. So that typically, if you've got a lot of health conditions, medical history, you might not qualify for a traditional policy. You might only be able to look at a hybrid policy. Now, the hybrid policies, the idea here is you're combining long-term care insurance with an added benefit. Now, that's going to be life insurance in the form of a death benefit or cash value from an annuity. So you're combining two things together. That way, if you don't need the care, there's a remaining benefit there. Now, again, if you're not as healthy, this might be your only option. Or if you like the idea of having a death benefit or having cash value because you're like, you know what? I don't think I'm ever going to need care. And I want something there remaining for my spouse, for my kids, if I don't need care. Some people prefer that and they like that idea. So that would be a hybrid policy. We even have an annuity with long-term care benefits. And those are going to be for the most unhealthy people. And basically that allows you to reposition a chunk of money and you get 2 to 3 times the coverage of whatever you put into the policy. So if you put in 100K, you might have $200,000 to $300,000 worth of coverage based on putting in, that chunk of money of 100,000. With the hybrid policies, we have more creative ways to fund the policy. So you could even be able to take qualified money and use retirement dollars, 401k, IRA, and reposition those to be able to fund and put into a hybrid policy. We can do 1035 exchanges from permanent life insurance policies. We can do payments over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, pay to 95, and even lump sums. So lots of really creative ways that we can fund a policy. But again, it's going to come down to what's the right fit for you based on your health and your finances. And that's going to determine what type of policy we look at, a traditional or a hybrid.
It's a lot to take in for folks.
It is. It is. It is. And that's why working with a long-term care and specialist is so important, Todd, because we have a lot of products available. There are many different nuances in these policies. The language is very, very unique. And so you want to make sure you're working with someone that has proper training and that's very familiar with how these products work and the triggers to these policies, how you receive benefits. That's really important. So, yeah.
Great. So that leads into our next topic, which is understanding the preferences for care. Can you share about those so that people can kind of start wrapping their brain around them? They've heard of them to whatever extent, but I know you'll share a lot more.
Yeah. So preferences for care. This really goes back to the beginning. Where do I want to receive care? That's part of one of the 3 main topics you want to think about when planning. So where do I want to receive care? Do I want to stay at home? Does it make sense for me to stay at home? If I have a spouse, is my spouse going to provide some level of care, some informal care, non-paid care to some extent? Maybe I do bring in some professional home care as well. And then my spouse, or maybe it's another family member, is going to provide some level of care as well. At what point does it make sense? Would it make sense for me to move out of my home? If I have to receive care 24 hours a day, and my spouse is providing care, or maybe I'm receiving professional home care, what does that do to the quality of life to my family member if they're having to provide 24 hours a day care? It's devastating. It really is. It's exhausting. We see significant caregiver burnout when family members are involved in providing a significant amount of care, even part-time care, really. So, for some people that do need to receive 24 hours a day care, we are seeing it could make more sense to move into a facility, to move into an assisted living facility. I'll tell you what, there are really high quality assisted living facilities. I mean, I can attest, my mama was there and my husband's grandma, they were actually in the same assisted living facility together, which was so sweet. But high quality assisted living facilities exist. And so would that be a good place for you? Even checking out local facilities. What do they look like? Are they inviting? What does it smell like? Are you greeted when you walk in the door? What are meals like? You can even go in and check these things out, have a meal there, interact with current residents, and just get a feel for different facilities. And I would highly recommend even working with like a facility locator. There are plenty that are around. And oftentimes these are also certified senior advisors like myself. They're not long-term care insurance specialists, but they're certified senior advisors that really are specialized in helping people find the right spot. So plenty of wonderful assisted living facilities around that could be beneficial. And also you've got that social component too. And I think that really needs to be considered, because if you are living at home, maybe your spouse has passed away or you're single, you might have some visitors coming and going, but being isolated can really cause depression, and that can really lower your quality of life. So if you have to move out of your home and you don't stay there forever, it's not the end of the world. It can actually really invigorate and really provide a better quality of life for you. There are also things called CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities, and we are seeing more and more of these pop up. We actually have one like less than a mile from us. And basically you enter really in an independent mode where you are providing care on your own. You're basically, it's basically like an apartment. You're coming, you're going, you're active, you're doing things. But as you age, and if you need more care, there's care available. Okay. Oftentimes we see there's like a lump sum that you have to put down in order to enter these CCRCs. And there are CCRCs that have different types of setups. So really each CCRC might be different in their payment and what that looks like. If you need different levels of care, there either might be, a monthly price premium for that. Again, that's something that you would really have to ask questions about. But the idea is if you need care, there are different levels of care that can be provided there, and you wouldn't necessarily have to move, which is nice. Or you would at least be able to stay on the same campus. You might have to move like from one building to another, but staying in the same campus. So that some people find that appealing. And again, working with like a facility locator might be helpful in these kinds of instances to really find, is this a good fit for me? And I will say you can even use a long-term care insurance policy in a CCRC, because the level of care that they are able to provide might not be the level that you actually need. You might need more hands-on assistance. So, you might be paying the CCRC a set of money per month, but then also have a policy that can kind of pick up, maybe another portion that they're not paying for or that you need more help with. And then there are, of course, nursing facilities, skilled nursing facilities. These are the nursing homes. This is typically the last place most people want to be, is in a skilled nursing facility. Typically the people that are here need medical care. They are also receiving that non-medical, transferring, toileting, bathing, dressing, eating, continence care. But typically they have more complex medical issues where they do need a nurse. They need that higher level of care. And also people that are on Medicaid. Okay. And I know we'll get into this later, Todd, but typically this is where Medicaid patients are going, is if they run out of money, they're typically put in a skilled nursing facility.
It's all interesting. I remember my two grandparents, my two grandmoms. One was in a skilled nursing facility at the end, and the other was at a CCRC.
Okay.
And started on the independent living side and ended up over on the nursing side, the assisted living side. So I've got that familiarity of it, and I know things have changed in the last 20 years to some extent, for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It keeps evolving. I mean, we are even seeing residential family homes. Actually, we had one up the street from us for several years. And basically it's a handful of people that are all living in like a ranch, like a family home, but you have people on staff that are there helping to provide care. So if you have that socialization, but it's a smaller community, not like an assisted living, you don't have, dozens of people living there. It's maybe 5 people, 4 people living in a home, but you're getting a lot of care that you need, and you're getting personalized care. So that's something to consider too.
Absolutely. primary purpose of the podcast is to educate. While guests are invited to listen, listeners acknowledge that they are not being provided professional advice from the podcast or any guests. One Day, One Week and its sponsor, 17 Commerce LLC, expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, reliance on, or inability to use the podcast episodes or the information presented in the episodes.